So my topic tonight is agreement, the better way to pray. And I felt like the best place to start with my message was really to give you guys a picture of how I got the revelation to begin with. And so I would have to go back like 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I had just texted Diane one morning. Just a simple like, hey, how's your day going so far? And her reply was, I have a horrific headache. So my response obviously was, well, I will be postured in prayer for you today. I mean, honestly, I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in it. I think it's one of the most powerful tools that we have in our hands. So throughout the day, I had prayed for Diane. And about mid-afternoon, I remember checking with the Lord at one point and just said, so how is she? Because I kind of wanted to know how effective my prayer was and how she was feeling. I just wanted to know how she was. And the response that I got from the Lord, he said, well, a little better. The edge is off, but still feeling pretty crummy. So when I heard that reply from the Lord, it kind of surprised me because I believed the effectiveness of my prayer. I was prayed in faith. I knew she wanted her headache to be gone. So I felt like we were in agreement. So I really didn't understand that. So I texted her even to say, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? And I got the exact same response from Diane. It was, the edge is gone, but I still feel pretty crummy. So that night when I crawled into bed and I was just talking with the Lord, I went back in prayer and I thought, okay, maybe I need to posture myself differently. Maybe I need to approach the prayer with more authority and more intentionality because maybe I wasn't as intentional as what I should have been to start with. So as I'm presenting myself to the Lord, this prayer, he actually shows me this vision in the Spirit, and I'm standing before him, and he actually takes his heart, basically how he felt towards Diane, and he showed it to me. And in that moment, I realized he felt the exact same way that I did about Diane. He wanted her headache to be gone. He wanted her to be well. So it kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't really expecting that to be the thing in my prayer that I was going to be responded to with, And so it made me kind of step back. So then I kind of went to Diane in the Spirit, and it made me kind of reevaluate how I was praying. And so I started having this conversation with the Lord, and I said, okay, Lord, if you already want what she and I want, then what exactly am I asking? What exactly is my prayer here? So what he started doing was speaking to me about what it looks like to agree in prayer. Because even though I was believing in a supernatural healing for Diane's headache to go away, Diane was believing for her Tylenol to kick in, or ibuprofen. She was waiting for pain meds to kick in. So even though we both wanted the same thing, we were believing for it differently. So we both wanted it, we just wanted it differently. So we weren't actually in agreement in that prayer. So even though she had full authority and I had full authority, what I actually feel like happened was our authority kind of counteracted each other. Because I told her I would be postured with her in prayer throughout the day. And I believe that our authority came together, but we were believing for two very different things. So what I really want to dive in with you concerning is the idea of agreement. And as I was studying this out, the Lord and I love words, and I love to look them up and really have a greater understanding of what they mean. And I looked up the word agreement. And the word agreement means the harmony of opinion, action, or character. I thought that was cool, but I wanted to go a little bit further. So harmony is a pleasing combination or arrangement of different things. Opinion is a belief. And action is an act of will or a function of the body or one of its parts. And character is moral excellence. So literally agreement is the harmony of a pleasing combination of beliefs, functions, acts, and moral excellence. So when we come together in agreement with the Lord, that's a picture of what it looks like to come into agreement with him. And when we come into agreement with each other, it's the same thing. That there's a very specific picture of agreement. It's not just that we want the same thing. It goes so much deeper than that. There's a requirement of our character in agreeing with the Lord. So as I started studying out some scriptures on what this looks like, he first took me to that night, that prayer that I had. So if you go to Matthew 6, okay, let's just be real here for one quick second. There's a lot of stuff here. I wanted you to have my process because where I actually have this real-world application of where my revelation came from, I feel like the Lord can give you a foundation of getting the same kind of revelation. So that's what all that is about. We may or may not get through all of that, but it's there for reference. In fact, there are a couple I didn't even throw up there. But let's go to Matthew 6 to start. So I wanted to show you this picture right here in verses 7 and 8. Jesus in this story is talking about prayer and about how to approach prayer. So he says, when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. So let's lay that as a foundation for where we're starting here. Because that night going into prayer with the Lord, I've known for quite some time that prayer is not about informing God of anything. We don't go before the Lord to tell him about our day because he doesn't already know about it. So prayer, I think, has two very basic functions. The first is for us to lay out all of our stuff on the table with the Lord. You know, there are scriptures that talk about the mysteries of a person's heart, and that the Lord partners with us to reveal the mysteries of our own hearts. So prayer then, when we go to the Lord and we talk about our day, that's really our revelation about how we feel about what's going on in our everyday lives. So the first aspect of prayer is actually to take our stuff before the Lord and give him the opportunity to bring us revelation about how we feel and where we are in the process. The second aspect of going to the Lord is to learn his heart concerning us or a matter. So it comes in a partnership, but the first thing to remember is that he already knows what we need. He knows it well. And I love, as you read on, which we're not going to read too much more into this particular passage, but Jesus actually teaches how to pray. So it starts to create this picture that prayer isn't just about coming to our Father and asking him to meet a need. It starts there. It really does. But it's supposed to be so much more than that. If you go to, I'm just going to reference this. If you go into Genesis, when it talks about God creating the human race, he talks about the authority that we were given. And then it goes on to talk about how he comes and walks with us in the cool of the day. So he wants to come with us. He wants to be part of our everyday lives. But he wants us to walk in authority. So it's important to know just some of the foundations of what prayer is actually about. So, okay, we're going to start there. Let me see in my notes where I want to go from here.
A lot of the AC is drowning out your voice a little bit, so you might have to lift it up a little bit.
Okay, let me get a drink quick.
That comment is like,
Yeah, okay. Okay, before we go any further, I think it would be really good to mention something here. I do not believe that seeking medical help is second-class healing. I think that's really important for us to know. Because as a body of believers, we can get hung up in the idea that if it's not supernatural, then it's somehow lacking faith or authority. And that could not be further from the truth. I really believe that when you consider how the Lord partners with us in life, I think that there are people throughout the generations that sought the Lord for a greater understanding of the world around them and how to harness it to bring health. There's a reason that we extract aspirin from trees. It's because the Lord put something here that we're able to extract something helpful out of. So there's not a single part of me that believes for a minute that there's one way better than the other. Diane's authority in believing for her medicine to kick in was absolutely perfect. It was beautiful because that's what she was believing for. So just because that's what she was believing for, it doesn't make it less. Sometimes we can get supernatural healings, but sometimes we're meant to partner together with our gifts and our authority in the earth. And that's our avenue for healing and eventual health. Okay? And I think it's really important that we take the time to acknowledge that, because if not, then we walk in a spirit of judgment about what is worthy of our pursuit and what isn't. And I don't feel like that's the Father's heart. I think he wants to partner with us in every avenue of life, including the things that we have faith in. He partners with us in that. One of my favorite sayings, and it kept coming up as I was studying this out, your actions will always follow your beliefs. So wherever you start in what you believe, you will walk that out. If you believe that the Lord can heal you supernaturally, and that's what you want to pursue, then there is a path where the Lord will partner with us to go down that road. But our actions will always follow what we believe. So it's really important to go back and reevaluate what we believe. And there's something that I wanted to get to later, but I think the Lord really wants me to kind of lay it here. There's a scripture where, let me see, I know it's in Matthew. Let me see in my notes here, because I'll reference it for you guys. Matthew 16, 13 through 19. It was one of my favorite things that the Lord said to me during this whole study. So Jesus is walking with his disciples, and they're having a conversation, and Jesus says, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" So it's that conversation that he's having with the disciples. And so the disciples give their various responses, and Simon Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus says, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but my Father in heaven." So I feel like it's really important to know that when we enter a prayer closet with the Father, one of the most important places to start is asking the question, who do we say he is? When the Lord told me that, I felt like that was so powerful. Because if we go in our brokenness and only see the Lord as a healer, then we really have no other objective to partner with him, because he's just our healer. And we love him, but that is the role that he plays in our lives. And so without meaning to, we can actually put God in a box. And that was never what we were supposed to do. So I feel like it's really important to start with, who do we say he is? So in coming into agreement with the Father, what we have to do is start with this place of, okay, we know he's a Father. We know in his goodness, he knows what our needs are. We start there. Then from there, we kind of have to start recognizing for ourselves who we believe he is. Because then we give him that authority in our lives to be whoever we say he is. If we say that he is the ultimate, he is everything good, he's everything kind, he's everything love, then that is how our authority in the earth will partner with him. Let's go to Matthew 18. So Diane 2 weeks ago taught about coming to the Lord as a child, coming childlike. And that unless you come like a child, you can't even enter the kingdom. So the Lord brought this back up as I was studying. I thought it was really cool where he went with this. I don't want to read the whole chapter, but let's go to verses 19 and 20. Actually, let's do 18, 19, and 20. I tell you the truth, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there am I with them. So I have to tell you guys, the Lord has told me this whole topic 8 different ways. So I'm just really letting him take me wherever he wants to take me, and I'm not really sure where that is right now. So just bear with me for a minute. I think it's important to know that in these passages here, the Lord acknowledges our authority. So with beginning in this place that we have to acknowledge who God is to us, whoever that is also how we see our own authority in the earth. Do you want me to say that again? Are we good? Okay. Whoever we say God is, in return, is how we will see ourselves empowered in the earth. We will walk in that same authority. Okay? So if we partner with the creator of everything, and we see ourselves shoulder to shoulder with the Lord, then we see our authority in the earth being limitless. Because we are side by side with the authority in the earth that is limitless. And that there's a true partnership in there. That's why it's so important to acknowledge who he is and recognize everything that he is, because it has a direct impact on how we walk in the earth. Okay? So in this chapter of Matthew 18, I read through the whole thing several different times, and this is the picture that I got that the Lord had kind of drawn out. Okay, so it's important to know who he is, and it's important to know who we are because of him. But there's a way that we come to the Lord first, and I feel like there's a really significant reason why the Lord talks about coming to him as a child. Because what that does, when you read through this whole chapter, you guys can read this later. It's really good. Study this out for yourselves. But in this chapter, it talks about coming to the Lord as a child. And I feel like there's a reason, not just a literal child, but a metaphoric child. It's symbolic of what it means to come innocent, to come vulnerable, to come willing, to come open-hearted and open-minded. That when we come to the Lord, we come as a child. We come as those who have to have our needs taken care of by the Father. That's where we start. But I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we can't stay there. And too many of us in the church stay there. And it goes back to who we say he is. Because then we see ourselves only as children and never sons. So it talks about the parable of the lost sheep. After it talks about coming as a child, it goes on to talk about how we pray and coming together in prayer. Then it talks about not having sins amongst us. So the Lord is starting to paint a picture in Matthew 18 of what it looks like to come to him as a child, recognize our needs, grow beyond that, and rise into maturity. There's a quote from a movie, and I quote it all the time because it's my very, very favorite. It's from Robin Hood, and it is, "Rise and rise again until lambs become lions." And the Lord really made that jump out at me as I was reading this passage, because it talks about being lost sheep and being children with the Lord. And there is this place where being postured in the Lord is absolutely about coming to him and having our most basic needs met. But as you continue through Scripture, and even any of the passages that talk about prayer, there are standards and requirements of us within the body of prayer. And I believe that that's actually the picture of what it actually looks like to come into agreement with the Father. So when it talks about walking in righteousness, when it talks about forgiving our brothers, all of those things build a picture of how we have to come into agreement with him, how we have to come into maturity. I love when Mark has taught about every parent loves their babies when they're babies. It's such a cool time in life to grow in relationship with them and to build a really strong foundation. But what kids learn at that age, they learn a standard of their parents. So when we come to the Lord innocent, when we come like children, we submit our authorities fully, as children would, to the teaching of our Father. And what he does in that time of our faith is that he teaches us a standard, a very specific way that we are supposed to live and walk and be in relationship with each other and with him. So he wants to raise us into maturity. The reason I love that saying so much, rise and rise again, is because, guys, life is hard. Christianity is hard. Relationship with the Father is hard. And anyone that tells you that it's easy, they don't really understand. They're actually really not even walking in relationship with the Lord in a way that they understand that there is a cost for sonship. There is a cost for maturity. There absolutely is. But it's a cost, it's a price worth paying. And that's where the more time we spend with the Lord, the more we take on his character, the more we take on his way of thinking, his approach towards circumstances. And that's the picture of how we grow into agreement. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions? Okay. So I was really inspired by Kendall's message on Sunday. He was talking about Peter in Luke 5, where Peter had fished all night and didn't catch a thing. And he comes to shore, and the Lord says, I think you should go back out to the deep. And so Simon Peter, in the natural, looked at his circumstances and thought, you have to be kidding me. I'm exhausted. That's the last thing that I want to do. But he recognized something in the Lord that told him, this is worthwhile. I can guarantee you there was a cost to Peter. He wanted to go home and go to sleep. I guarantee it. I've been there. I've been in a place in the natural where I was so beyond exhaustion. Sleep is all I wanted. And in those moments, typically that's when God comes and says, why don't you go do this thing? And you know it's costly. You know it is. Because when you're exhausted, everything's expensive. That's just how it is. But there's a faithfulness in our response when we can look beyond the circumstances of the natural and say, okay, I don't quite see what you're seeing, Father, but I know who you are, and I'll respond accordingly because I'm sure it's worth it. So when Peter went, it was worth it. And I feel like the reason why Peter came to shore and then laid before the Lord and said, man, I'm awful, I'm sinful, I can't even believe that I doubted you, is because rising in maturity with the Lord, there has to be a certain amount of belief that we have. That even though we can't see what's on the other side, that we go into it postured with a certain attitude. Attitude has so much to do with the result that we'll get on the other side. That's why it's important. So God is calling us to the deeper places. And I feel like that's why this is such a timely message for all of us. Is coming into agreement with the Lord and understanding the full authority that we have in prayer. It's time. It's time that we start utilizing prayer the way that it was always meant to be used. Because I know when I posture myself before the Lord, things are going to happen. The atmosphere is going to respond. There will be results. Because that's what I'm believing for going into it. Okay, let's talk about faith for a second. I feel like this would be a good time to talk about that. If you were to define faith, just in the natural, don't give me a biblical answer, but how would you guys define faith? What does that look like to you?
Loyalty.
Okay.
Trust.
Oh yeah, true. Okay. Scary. It is scary. I think that that's too where like with Peter in that story, when he was looking at his natural circumstances were in his way of seeing the spiritual truth. So when we approach something in faith, if we don't take the time to look beyond our natural circumstances, everything about taking that step of faith would be terrifying. because of our natural eyes, because of how we've postured ourselves there. Okay, so I'm going to give you a biblical definition of faith, and then I'm going to give you an autumn definition of faith. So Hebrews 11, verse 1 says, "Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see." Okay, so then an autumn definition. So the writer of Hebrews says faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So faith has everything to do with what we can't see yet. And I'm sure you guys could agree that when you can't see the other side of something, it's not the thing itself that's scary, it's the unknown that's scary. We don't like the unknown. Crazy as that is, but we just don't like it. So my autumn definition, let me see if I can find my notes on it, or if I'm just going to have to do it from memory. Okay. Faith to me is unyielding confidence. If I'm believing boldly for something, then my confidence that whatever I'm believing for cannot move me from my position. To me, that's true faith. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So you guys talk to me a little bit. The Lord's kind of going in a different direction than what I thought he was going to go. So talk to me for a minute.
I really like how you said what your definition of faith was, because I feel like that kind of connects straight back to how we see him. Because if we don't see him as, a creator, the strong figure, then we would almost lack faith or lack the confidence in who he is, which would almost be like tumbling blocks from there on out then.
True. Okay. Let's go to Galatians 4. All right, I'm gonna start reading at the end of chapter 3, verse 26. "You are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. What I am saying is that as long as the heir is a child, he is no different from a slave. Although he owns the whole estate, he is subject to guardians and trustees until the time set by his father. So also when we were children, we were in slavery under the basic principles of the world. But when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under law, to redeem those under law, that we might receive the full rights of the sons. Because you are sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And since you are a son, God has made you also an heir." So, guys, I think it's time that we really recognize that we have a call to rise. That the days of being childish and even childlike, that was for coming, not for staying there. We're not only inheriting the kingdom, we're supposed to be advancing it. And because of that, we have to recognize that, let me see where I have this written. Agreement with the Father isn't an occasional decision, it's a way of life. So every time we come into agreement with the Father, we're not coming into agreement just for this thing that we want. We're coming into agreement with him and how we live our everyday life. You can go to Micah 6:8 or 1 Corinthians 13 for the standards of how to walk life in love. But that's really what God is calling us up to, is not just this place where we believe for a specific thing to happen. That's faith, and that's a good thing. That's where we're supposed to start when we come to him and we partner with him. It is to accomplish things. But that's not all that prayer is meant for. Prayer is really about that recognition of partnership with the Lord, where we're no longer on our knees before him, presenting petition before him to say, okay, well, I really need this thing done. Can you do it for me? It's more than that. It's about rising into our sonship, into full maturity, and then standing shoulder to shoulder with the Lord, spending time with him, taking on his mind, his attitude, his approach, and then looking at the world together with him with a standard. Then suddenly, it's not about asking the Lord what he wants done. It's not even about saying, well, Lord, if you want me to move, you're going to have to show me something, because I'm not really sure how to move here. I think that we have too many examples of the Lord just saying, no, just go, and I'll show you when you get there. Abram is a great example. The Lord absolutely had full right to demolish the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. But instead, he came to his son and said, son, this is my judgment that I'm going to make. I'm so angry. And he actually gave Abram an opportunity to say, wait a minute. You know, what if there are righteous in there? Let's partner together. Let's look at this from my perspective. And the Lord opened himself up to his son to allow his son to show him something. And then together they made a decision. And that's the picture of what it looks like to come into agreement with the Father and then make decisions in our authority in the earth. Okay? That's what we're being called to. This is the time to rise into that. So, agreement with the Father, I'm going to say it again, isn't just about an occasional decision. That's where it's more than just presenting a request to the Lord and then hoping that thing will be done. Like, you'll get your paycheck with enough time to make your mortgage payment, or that your paycheck is going to be big enough, or that your professor at school will give you an extension to get a paper in. Prayers before the Father can't look that way to sons. We have to get beyond that. We're being called higher. It's a way of life. So when we walk in righteousness, when we walk with the attitude of the Father, the approach of the Father, then we walk in agreement all the time. So then it's not just presenting things before the Lord. It's saying, you know what, Lord, I see something over there I really want to do. Partner with me in it. And I feel like that's what the Father is calling us to. And he's so excited about it. That's all I can hear from him in his spirit. Like last night, after I had kind of written down some final thoughts, I couldn't sleep for hours after I had written. Because I had to just get up and walk around my room and kind of dance and be happy, because I could feel the Lord's joy when he saw a vision of us coming together in agreement with the way of walking in agreement with him. And it's time for that, to walk in agreement with the Lord.
I think that this path is always going to, not this path, but walking in agreement with the Lord forces us to be outside of ourselves and our immediate business.
True.
I think in a lot of ways, as we walk into sonship with the Lord, our own personal spheres of needs become invisible, because all we can see is his stuff and what he wants, and all we can feel with our hearts is what he wants. And so, like, that's when the childish prayers cease, and I'm not feeling good today, or pray that the specific thing happens so that my life is made simpler or more convenient, or so that I don't have a consequence for a poor decision that I've made, or any of those things. That stuff has to go away, because our agreement with the Lord is that his total process in us and on the earth be accomplished. And so we can't shortcut it, and we're unwilling to shortcut any level of suffering that would take us through the sufferings of Christ, so that we can look like Christ.
Yes.
It's the whole point.
Yeah.
So we can't pray our way. We don't want to pray our way out of that. We err anyway. It's to err on the side of, all right, Lord, let it hurt. Just to learn what it's like to pick up our cross,
And I love that you said that, because it really reminded me of something that I was going to say. and that is sometimes in the midst of our suffering, we will come to the Lord with a need. I have a headache, my back hurts, whatever, whatever the need is in that moment. And sometimes the Lord will let it burn. And in our immaturity, we could look and see, well, aren't you a faithful Father? Why are you allowing me to endure something? But what the Lord has shown me over the years is that we choose our consequences sometimes. And there are a lot of, do you have something to say?
I have a comment.
Okay, hold that thought, we'll get there. Okay. There are a lot of different examples that I could give, but I'll give one just very simple, natural one that happened to me a couple of days ago. I went to a party. On my way there, as I was leaving my driveway, the Lord said, you should go back in the house and get your water bottle. Because I was thirsty. He knew I was. I said, well, I'm already, half hour late, casually. I just want to get there. Maybe I'll stop somewhere on the way. So I passed a convenience store, and he said, weren't you going to stop for a bottle of water? And I said, it's a party. They'll have bottles of water there, I'm sure of it. So I get there, and there were no bottles of water. There was no water. There was soda and sweet tea, both of which had caffeine in it. And the thing about me is I can't drink caffeine, or I will withdraw with headaches for days. I know this to be true. But I had already ignored the Lord, and I was thirsty. And I thought, okay, I'm rolling the dice here. I may be inviting a very natural consequence here, but I'm going for some sweet tea. I had a migraine the entire day following. I kind of knew I would. And so rather than even asking the Lord to take my migraine away, I took a couple Tylenol, and I allowed, the worst of it to go away, but I allowed some of it to remain because I recognized I chose this consequence. I did it knowingly. And I think in our maturity, we have to recognize that sometimes we will make decisions knowing that there's going to be a consequence. And the reason why the Lord doesn't remove the consequence is because we will make the same mistake again if we don't endure with the consequence for a little while. It's the only way, it's the best way for us to come to that conclusion quickly. Quickly. I think the Lord wants us to get past those things quickly because He doesn't want us to endure suffering for a long period of time. He just wants us to get it. Say, look, there's a better way. Partner with me. Start looking at things the way that I see them. And when you see something in the natural that's going to have a consequence, and I give you a better choice, take the better choice. And you will save yourself the consequence. I love something else that you say, Diane, is that there's no reward for the middle. There's no reward of the middle. We have processes for a reason. The entire process is designed to advance us. The things that don't belong in our lives will fall away in the process. We become who we're meant to be in the process. But if we shortcut it, if we abbreviate the process, even though that looks like the way out, and it looks like this immediate alleviation of the weight of what we're feeling, the process was made for us. And we're actually robbing ourselves and the Lord of our finished selves when we shortcut it. Do you want to give your comment here, Taylor?
I just had a story real quick.
Okay.
So this is when I was kind of learning to trust the Lord in prayer. And I had worked landscaping. And I had done something to my back or something. And I'd gone home and I was getting ready to, have dinner. And I went upstairs and I had gotten to the point where it might have been a pinched nerve or something in my lower back. And I was struggling to walk. And I had to go from upstairs to downstairs. And I had been praying probably since I had gotten off work for my back to stop bothering me. And I went to go down the stairs and I did not see any capability in my body to walk down the stairs. So I sat down and I'm sliding down, and every stair I was like, ouch, ouch. It was so painful. If y'all have ever had pinched nerves, then I think you understand. And as I was going down the stairs, I was like, Lord, I believe this has purpose. I started screaming. I was like, I trust you. I trust you. And like, it was so painful every stair the whole way down. And when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I stood up and all the pain was gone from my back. And I don't know, like, you said that the Lord doesn't immediately take things away, but he does have purpose in them. And even if the purpose was for me to go down the stairs and like tell the Lord that I trust him, even when it's hurtful, like I think that kind of plays a part in life. Like we commit ourselves to trusting the Lord even when we're going through pain, because we know that he has purpose in it one way or another. So I don't know, maybe that kind of applied, maybe it didn't. It seemed like it did.
Yeah, I think the important thing to note there is that God doesn't cause the pain, but he gives us opportunity to choose things and to allow things to happen. And when things have happened, once they're our reality, he is faithful to use them. And I would agree.
Or maybe he made it hurt worse, so that when I went down the stairs, I would sit down, and then that action of going down the stairs bumped the nerve back into place.
I don't think he made it hurt worse.
Well, it seems logical.
I think that God created a system that we live in. He created nerves in our bodies, and I've had pinched nerves. They hurt. That's the nature of the pinched nerve. And I think what he allowed is he allowed your body to respond to its atmosphere, its surroundings, its conditions, so that you would, in response to that, make a decision. He was with you in the decision to sit down. He was with you in the decision to go down the steps the way that you did. He was with you in that. I just don't think that he caused the pain. But since the pain was there, he taught you something in it. That's the beautiful thing about the Father, is that pain will come. And it will come because it comes, because it's part of the world that we live in. But in his faithfulness, he wants to partner with us in everything, good or bad. And when we posture ourselves first as children, then we recognize that every experience is a learning opportunity. Every experience is. And that it has the ability to advance us and to advance him, because it's partnership with him. We think we're the only ones advancing in life. He's advancing in life with us. We get to take him places with us. That's the beautiful thing about partnership with the Lord. We take him everywhere we go. It's cool. It's good stuff.
This is reminding me of something I was reading this morning. It was talking about 2 Corinthians 4. It talks about how I'm trying to summarize a whole lot in a little bit. That's probably a mistake. But essentially, it talks about, at the end of 3, it talks about how we behold the glory of the Lord as though we're looking in a mirror. Like it starts to rise on our faces, kind of like it did with Moses.
Yeah.
And then in 4, he says he gives us this whole spiritual wellness, but then he gives it to us in earthen vessels, so that his glory is what stands out.
Yeah.
It's like our frailty and our weakness, our humanity is the intentional foil.
Yeah.
Or, as you would call it, a canvas.
Yeah.
To
Absolutely.
reveal his glory. That's why all of that is.
Yeah. It's all good. You know, I was thinking about this earlier, over the past 2 weeks, earlier probably yesterday. We talked a little bit about this last week. Mark knew what I was going to talk about this week and brought up some of it. But the man who is at the city gate called Beautiful, who was asking Peter and John for alms. And they said, listen, we don't have money, but what we do have, we will give you freely. So he was healed. He got up and walked. And we were talking last week about how 2,000 years, more or less, after that encounter happened, after that healing happened, we're still talking about it. And I think it's important to recognize that there will be times that we will ask the Lord for something, and we even believe in our authority that it could happen. But I feel like the Lord is intentional about when he allows us to release our authority for things like that. Because by this point, that man was in his 40s. I think that there were other people that could have healed him. But in that specific moment in history, because it was Peter and John, because of the work that they were doing at that time, I feel like Peter and John were the right ones to heal that man. They were the right people at the right time to release their authority to do something. And I feel like that's part of why it was a testimony. It happened at the right time. It released the Lord's glory in the earth. And it did it in a way that lasted for generations. And I think that sometimes when we come into agreement with the Lord, part of that isn't just taking on his attitude or his approach. It's also taking on this perspective that says, God doesn't just see my lifetime. God is thinking corporately, and God is thinking generationally. So I know that I fell off of a horse when I was 22. And when I fell, I herniated a disc. Had no idea that I did. I just knew it hurt. Had problems with it for a while. But my lifestyle never really allowed that issue to fully heal in my body. I could have, at that time, really allowed myself to fully heal, but I didn't. So what I feel like God did was God took a decision that I made, which was probably the wrong decision for me. I could have really shortened the process. I could have gotten someplace much more quickly than what I did. But he honored my process. It took 8 years and a very expensive back surgery for me to heal something that had happened. But because it happened when it did, it glorified the Lord in my life in a way that I don't think it would have if I would have had a very natural healing at the age of 22 or 23. So I just feel like there's a reason why in our brokenness, healing doesn't come instantly. There's a timing for healing. I honestly believe that it's not just for us to endure it because God wants us to endure pain, but I think that he sees these moments in our lives that when he releases us into something at a very specific moment, it partners with us in a way that it propels us forward. And my healing absolutely propelled me from the moment of healing onwards. But it was a journey with the Lord. And I really believe that I am who I am now because God went on that journey with me. Even though I could have made different decisions all along the way, he went every step of the way with me. He was in agreement with me. And I couldn't see where we were going. A lot of the times in that experience, I was looking forward blindly. I had no idea where we were going to go. I had no idea when healing was going to come. I had no idea if it was going to be natural through surgery or if it was going to be supernatural through healing. But I trusted the Lord to partner with me in it, and he did. And I'm so blessed by his partnership. I think that that's why I really have the heart to encourage you guys to come into agreement with him. Not just in praying for the immediate, but in seeing the long term. In seeing how we have opportunities to not just have impacts in our own lives or in just our circle of friends, but we can have impacts in nations and in generations. And that ultimately, that's the Father's heart for allowing us to rise into maturity, partnering with us in that, and then bringing his kingdom here, establishing it, walking in it. That is what we were made for. I think I'm gonna end with this. There are some other directions I could go, but I feel like I want to end here in John 5. Okay, let's go to verse 19. Jesus responded to the Pharisees and said, I tell you the truth. The Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son does also. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, to your amazement, he will show him even greater things than these. I'm just going to keep that in there. There's obviously a lot of context with what Jesus is saying here. But when we spend time with the Father, he's faithful to raise us up as sons. He's faithful to show us a better way. And in that, a better way to utilize our authority. So I encourage you that no matter where you are in the process, recognize that there is a better way, that you have greater authority than you have ever operated in before, and now is the time to release it. that's all I've got. Do you guys have any questions?
That was awesome.
I do have a question, actually.
Okay.
So, you started out with the example of my headache.
Yep.
And, like, if you had asked me, like, when we talked about this later, if you had asked me how, not to, like, phrase it bizarrely, but how can I partner with you? What path are you taking towards your healing today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how are we doing this? How are we, you know, is that how we come into agreement with each other, but
Yeah.
not at expense of coming into agreement with what the Lord is ultimately seeing for that person? Like,
It's twofold, and I'm glad you brought that up because I really did want to say that. That when I went to the Lord, which I could have done things very quickly. I could have gone to the Lord. I could have just asked him to show me his heart for you much sooner, and he would have. He would have said, I already want this for Diane. My heart is already turned towards her. I want her well. And I would have seen that and thought, okay, well then let's get Diane well. And I would have come to you and said, okay, you want to be well. What are you believing for? How are you believing for yourself to get better?
right.
And you would have said, man, I've got a handful of pain meds, and I've got a half hour before my kids wake up. Then that's what I would have believed with you for, was that window and that path. That was the picture. That's
But you
what.
wouldn't have done that at the expense of what you felt the Lord was doing in my life.
No. If he had told me, Diane has a headache today because she made a really bad food choice yesterday. She drank sweet tea, and she's living with her consequence, and this is a really great opportunity for her to learn a better way. If he had told me that, then I would have said, girl, I love you. I'm with you. Hopefully it gets better. Sorry about it.
Good luck.
That would have been my response. I would have been with you in it.
Right.
I would have been there while you endured through it, but I wouldn't have prayed any differently. I wouldn't have gone to the Lord and asked him for anything different. I would have recognized his decision in that, and I would have recognized that was the better way.
So in that place, then, you would have said something like, not that we're scripting prayers now, but essentially you would have said, Lord, get a hold of her, or like, I release you to work through her, to show her yourself today, those sorts of like things.
Yeah,
You know,
then
instead of-
my prayer would have been very different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It would have been to, if you're making decisions that are harming you, and that's what the Lord is showing me, then absolutely I would be praying over your choices. I maybe even would encourage you at some point during the day. Say, hey, would you have for lunch? Or if I would have had an opportunity and it occurred to me, I would have taken you to lunch. As an encouragement, okay? To be in it with you. Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways to be in agreement, but that would have been a great picture of what it would have looked like and how it could have been different.
So what do we do with somebody who comes to us who has in their mind what they want for you? Like, what do you do with that then?
What they want for you?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay.
Maybe not what you want to tell them, but what you really should tell them.
Like, what do you do if, like, okay, in my instance, I'm not really sure yet where my healing is going to come from. So what do I say to someone who comes and says, I know that this is where it's coming from?
If you lack the faith for that to come in that avenue, then you can ask them to wait. And I'll be honest, when I was having the problems with my back, I've had a lot of people pray over me. And in some of those prayers, I was alleviated from pain for a period of time, but the problem never corrected. One of the reasons I brought up faith is because faith alone is not what prayer was meant to be built on. It's part of what drives it, but agreement has to be the other side to it. When I was having my issues with my back, there were people that would come up and pray for me, and there came a point in my process where I was actually becoming frustrated in my faith with well-meaning people laying their hands on me and praying for me, because I realized there came a point when I was not in agreement with what I knew they were going to pray for me. They would say, Lord, heal this body. And I would say, Lord, I'm already familiar with this process, and I know that that is not how this healing is going to come. And I eventually had to stop people in praying for me, and as they would approach me and say, I want to pray with you. Honestly, what I would say is, you know what? I could just really use a good hug. I mean, that's true. I needed encouragement. I didn't need my faith, false hope essentially. I didn't need them to frustrate my process. So sometimes people will want to come alongside you, and they'll do it sort of with a misguided heart because they don't understand agreement. So understanding agreement now, when you have people come up and they have this vision of how they're going to pray for you and where they're going to get you, what you can do with that is really give them a return and say, man, I love your heart for me, and I honor you for that. But this is how you can pray for me. This is what I'm believing for. Then you give redirection to their prayer and their heart for you, and then you can tell them that a specific way to pray for you, but maybe you need encouragement. Maybe if you're in physical pain, maybe you need someone to come over on a Friday and help clean your house. We have an opportunity as a family, rather than just coming up and saying, I want to pray for you, and doing it in an empty manner. Let's give redirection to that. Not just, no, don't pray for me, or, well, you can pray for me, but I'm not believing a word that's coming out of you. We don't have to stay there. We have opportunity to grow with each other in that.
And we're not forced to politely entertain.
No, because that's unfair to politely entertain. And that's what I had to come to the conclusion of, was I had these people who in their faith were coming and wanting to lay hands on me and pray. And for the duration thereafter that I was not healed, they were looking at the evidence that their faith wasn't enough for me. That's actually what my entertaining their prayers and letting them say what they wanted to say, but not agreeing with it, that's what it was getting at. It was actually a frustration. So there has to be there has to be a redirection and a correction to how we partner with each other. It's more than faith. Agreement is more than faith. It absolutely has faith intertwined. This unyielding confidence that what we want will come. But we have to stop putting stipulations on the pathway that it comes. That's where we partner with the Lord and say, okay, I know this thing is going to come. I knew I was going to get healed. I knew I was. I just surrendered myself to the Lord in the process to say, okay, let's walk this out, and you show me when we get there what the right answer is. And for me, it was surgery. And I absolutely believe that when those surgeons laid their hands on me, they were partnering with the Father. And in fact, the surgeons are these awesome believers. So I mean, beyond just the natural of they are children of God, those particular surgeons happen to be sons of God. Because honestly, there were consequences for my surgery. I could have been paralyzed. There was a high percentage of that. It was a very good possibility. I may not have been able to walk. The surgery may not have worked, or it may have made my condition worse. Those were 3 very possible options of that decision. But going into that, I didn't believe for any of those outcomes. Because the surgery was my miracle. I knew it was. That's how I believed for it. That was the vision that I had. So whatever pathway you choose in agreeing with the Father, partner with Him. But choose the thing that you can believe for, and then walk it out with Him. Are you guys good? Any other questions? All right, cool. I love you guys, as Mark would say. See you guys.